A brutal ship in the middle of nowhere has people busy in organ trading and conducting illegal operations on people. It looked like a case of human trafficking. The main lead Namkoong is introduced to what looks like a rescue attempt by killing the organ traders. The mystery thickens when Coast Guards come for the rescue and find a disheveled and blood-lashed guy mercilessly killing people. He verbally confirms some sort of code or identity which gets tracked to a high-classified file when someone at the back end tries running them. The Veil starts with utter chaos and confusion at the NIS where people get red flags after trying to access the file. It comes to attention that the so-called legendary NIS agent Han Jihyeok, Namkoong, who was presumed dead, is very much alive and breathing. Han Jihyeok gets transferred to the NIS and shocking revelations begin. He was exposed to zip, a memory-erasing substance, and some other kind of drugs. Han Jihyeok might have been tortured by other parties as indicated by the number of wounds he has all over his body. He has lost all his memories of the last year and only remembers few fragments of memory. He went on a covert mission in China along with his partners who ended up dead. Jihyeok does not remember how his colleagues died, and trying hypnotherapy failed as well. His memories are locked and he violently attacks everyone near him. In a shocking twist, it turns out that Jihyeok did this to himself. He erased his memory to catch them all in the NIS who betrayed their group in the mission. Jihyeok leaves a video for himself and warns him not to trust anyone. Meanwhile, the people at NIS don't trust him and had him on constant surveillance. The Veil episode 1 set up most characters and introduced what looked like key players and what's their connection to the plot. The real nightmare begins when the Hwayang gang starts killing law enforcement officers and demands the release of the gang member Jang Gwang-keol. The NIS Foreign Intelligence Bureau members had a discussion and sent Jihyeok and Ha Dong-kyeon, Kim Do-hyun, to get a confession from Gwang-keol. There is a beef of some sort between Jihyeok and Dong-kyeon and they do not seem to be on good terms. There are more shocking twists awaiting the Veiled drama in episode 2. Jihyeok is successful to make Gwang-keol, but no important information is disclosed by him. Jihyeok has a meeting with the driver of the gang and leaves him a contact number to get information. More shock and betrayal awaiting. The Hwayang gang had their own plans. At midnight the gang infiltrated the police station where Gwang-keol was locked. They attacked with full force and killed many police officers. What's more shocking was the identity of the real leader and what happened to Gwang-keol. The leader is the driver and he ended up slitting Gwang-keol's throat for reasons undisclosed. The gang massacred the police station and left the scene after taking care of Gwang-keol. Han Jihyeok ends up chasing them and gets into a confrontation. The Hwayang gang leader mocks him and calls Jihyeok. He releases the identity of the leader, but it's too late by then. Jihyeok goes back to the station and sees the mess created by the gang. He reviews the CCTV footage and saw what went down and found an interesting yet shocking discovery. Lee Chun-gil, the information broker from 1 year ago, was in the police station with the gang. He might have disclosed about Jihyeok, who had killed few members of the gang in the past and made significant damage to them. The Veil episode 2 ends with Jihyeok remembering the identity of the person when he opened the door in the flashback. The person revealed is Lee Chun-gil. The Veil drama started with a cliché plot but with a solid storyline and acting. Namkoong is impressive as the solitary NIS agent who's feared and admired by everyone. It will be interesting to see how he deals with the aftermath of the mess the gang has left for him. With no one to trust, Jihyeok is busy dealing with his own fight. Start of episode 3rd and 4th review. Our cliffhanger last week left the Hwayang leader showing off that he knew Jihyeok all too well, and Jihyeok with a giant black hole in his memory that he's still trying to fill in. Like any good agent, he starts with his strongest leads, and that's Lee Chun-gil, Lee Ji-eun, his North Korean defector informant. Jihyeok remembers him at the safe house door before everything goes black, so he picks up that lead and runs with it. It's here that his new partner Ye-ji starts to show her worth, and even though she has zero field experience and seems like she belongs in a coffee shop instead of a shootout, they team up a bit more and run some decent ops together. This week's episodes explore two different leads, Hwayang and a new hacker plotline. However, instead of feeling episodic, God forbid, They felt like pieces of the same puzzle, because the overarching case looms over everything. The first plot arc is around Mosul and Hwayang's drug ring in Korea. Thanks to Choon-gil, Jihyeok is able to push into his forgotten memories a bit more. He recalls that Choon-gil was indeed at the safe house door, but he had called him out to tell him that their presence was compromised and that it looks like the leak came from within the NIS. Jihyeok gets one step closer in the past, which helps his investigation, but he's still handicapped in the present, as Hwayang always seems to know an important handful of things that he doesn't. While investigating the shipping container and drug routes they've set up, Jihyeok is captured and taken to a glitzy hotel penthouse where he's tortured by Mosul. This man is beyond insane, and though the terrifying lunatic drug lord character has been played many a time, this guy really knocks it out of the park. Every time we think Jihyeok has misstepped and is truly in danger, we learn that he's planned one step ahead of that. So for instance, the GPS tracker they find on him was actually a decoy, and the true tracker is one he's swallowed. But Ji isn't meant to raid the penthouse until he forces himself to throw it up. Of course he can throw upon command, and take it offline, which is the signal. When he gets the better of Mosul and his thugs, the scene turns into an utter bloodbath, so much that there's not much for Ji to do when she finally arrives. Even though Mosul has escaped, they secure important info on their disgusting meth lab techniques, and Jihyeok is able to be with Choon-gil to hear his dying words. This blood and mayhem is looked over by the NIS because Jihyeok has been on a brief sick leave. But of course they're all smarter than that. Deputy Commissioner Jo knows he'll really be pursuing the case. Jihyeok knows that she knows, and in the same way, the agents are always playing 10 steps ahead of each other, and twisting the situation to work for them, as they must. At the close of episode 3, we learn that Ji isn't as dewy and innocent as she seems. Well, maybe she is as innocent, but her motives are not. Much like Jihyeok, she's got her own secret investigation going, since her deceased father was also deeply involved in the case. This was a bit of a weaker, and expected, twist, and I don't really like Ji much, but I'll take it, because episode 4 is very much about Ji and her connection to an agent that worked closely with Jihyeok for many years. This agent was Ji's mentor, and his young son Choi Sang-kyun, and Ji-eun, known for his breakout role in Nobody Knows, is quite close to her. He's been patiently waiting for her to solve his father's suicide case, but decides to take matters into his own hands when she takes too long. Sang-kyun happens to be a genius hacker who has a plan B all ready to go. He uses his father's laptop to hack into the NIS servers, and this kicks off an elaborate game of cat and mouse. But the game of cat and mouse is not only between Sang-kyun and the NIS, but within the NIS itself. The more we see the inner workings, the more we learn how the domestic and foreign units are in an internal war with each other. The domestic team is put in charge of Sang-kyun's case, but who comes to his rescue in the middle of a Yeouido shopping mall, and later the subway? Jihyeok, displaying some more awesome moves, and working in concert with Ji. The plot of The Veil plays with a lot the idea of trust, whether it's winning someone's trust, losing it, building it over a common enemy, or even abusing it. Always make the other person think they're using you, says Jihyeok. It's a tactic he uses successfully again and again. As the plotline with Sang-kyun escalates, his mistrust of Jihyeok eventually lands him in NIS custody. Luckily, Jihyeok is able to talk to him off the record, with about a 5-minute window to save the entire bulk of the NIS servers from destruction. We have to believe that Sang-kyun's hacking skills are this good, but I'm willing to do so, because the interplay between the characters and timelines is just that good. To win his trust, Jihyeok comes clean to Sang-kyun, and we learn about the rapport between Jihyeok and Sang-kyun's father. Sang-kyun's father was helping Jihyeok while on his ill-fated operation in China, and we learn a lot more not only about the op, but the fact that they were closing in on the rat that seemed to be in their midst. Whether Jihyeok was told who it was or not, he doesn't remember, and shortly after was Sang-kyun's father's suicide. The drama, and Namkoong, let's face it, does such a superb job of tractor beaming us in. Jihyeok seems to know exactly what to say to this hurting boy, and his adeptness wins him an important bit of secret intel, which becomes our twist of the week. The person his father identified as the mole? Her name was Ji-eun. Despite being gorgeous and sexy, Ji-eun has been quite unlikable from the start. We're supposed to believe that she's still grieving over the death of Hwang Hee's character, but there's something about it that never quite landed for me. Was she really the mole that compromised their mission? She seems to hate Jihyeok to the bone, but perhaps the reason for that is different than we were led to believe. On a final note, the Veil is using their great OST to nail those episode ending twists much like the early episodes of You Are My Spring did. There's something so satisfying about that feeling when the music cues, and your brain gets ready for the twist to drop.